Subscribe to our YouTube channel for in-depth interviews of India Inc. and press the bell icon so that you do not miss our updates.
Hello and welcome to Nirmal, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Hiral Dadia. We have with us Vineet Agarwal, MD at TCI, joining in. Welcome to the show, Vineet, and it's a pleasure to have you. My first question coming to you is, firstly, if you could just help us understand, since the time the lockdown began in the last week of March to now, how were things then and how have things improved from there on?
Thank you so much for having me on this show. I think it's really great to see such amazing work that your team has been doing and keeping connect with all, not just investors, but everyone in the business community. So thank you so much. Since the lockdown started, I would say, April was possibly at 10 to 15% in terms of business. And we have multiple ranges of businesses, as you know, from road, rail, sea, logistics. So April was at 10 to 15%. May was possibly at 25 to 33%. And June was at 65 to about perhaps about 80%. And now I think almost all our businesses are above 80% in terms of their normal for the last year as a whole. So it has been a sharp pickup, but it is still nowhere near what we expect it should be over, in terms of our past plans. We also believe that this year is a year that nothing is going to be 100%.
Right.
GDP is going to be a negative 5 to 10%, barring a few sectors like perhaps pharmaceuticals or agriculture. Nothing is really going to be 100%.
Right. So overall, if you go to see beneath the impact on businesses, on economies has been immense. It has been unprecedented times, and I think no sector, no economy has been, has been saved out of this. If you could just help us understand, logistics again is a part of each and every sector right now. You take into consideration automobiles or FMCG or consumer durables, agri, any industry you talk about, logistics, transportation has to be a part of it. What's the sense that you pick up right now? Because again, it was the essentials which were allowed. Non-essentials have started picking up slowly, steadily right now. Have the things started to move according to you for the non-essential commodities as well?
So, see, I think in terms of one is that right categorization of essentials versus non-essentials. Now, if you think about from the agri side, if you think about some companies that manufacture seeds today, now that is really not an essential product. It's a non-essential going into for making something essential, or a tractor for that matter. So certain segments have certainly picked up, and their pickup had been continuous for the last few months. Certain sectors are languishing clearly. Sectors that have picked up more have been on the agri side, on the food grain side, pharmaceuticals, and certainly on the e-commerce side. We do a lot of work for e-commerce companies, and we've seen that really jumping. In fact, they are at the same levels as Diwali last year already. And on the non-essentials, or rather the industrial, the engineering products, cement, steel, and textiles, all of these are still struggling in terms of opening up. The other struggle is also on the MSME sides. I think a lot of MSMEs are not opening up 100%, because if one is that visibility of demand, the second is the fact that if they cannot operate something at a 30%, 40% levels, because their fixed costs or their operating costs are such that if you're not operating at a higher level, you will not make any money. So many MSMEs have not opened up also from that perspective.
Right. So when are you expecting business to return back to normalcy, to pre-COVID levels?
As I said, nothing is going to be 100% this year. I think there would be some businesses, certain segments that we operate. For example, we operate on the rail segment. We have a joint venture with Concord. and that business has been doing exceptionally well. In fact, in the last quarter, we grew at 80% over the last year. So, which means that there is cargo moving towards the rail. We have our shipping business. We own 7 ships, three on the three on the west coast, and 4 on the east coast, and they are running at more or less at capacity levels right now. So shift has happened from road to multimodal, from rail to rail and sea, because perhaps the road costs have gone up because of fuel prices going up, as well as there have been lockdowns, so it's not always easy to reach to places completely. So I think there is some pickup that we've seen already because of the festival season, and this will perhaps continue for the next few months. But then we do see things a little leveling off. So I would probably give not 100% for this financial year for any industry.
Right. And overall, if you go to see, even in terms of where, the challenges are concerned, now for logistics as well, again, labor would be one of the major challenges that the industry would have faced. How have things improved right now in terms of where labor and in terms of fleet as well, if you have to talk about road transport, where does it stand right now?
So labor across the country is, of course, quite a challenge. I think many places, since labor left and went to their hometowns, they have not returned back yet, and availability is still a challenge. But it has started to pick up. We've seen there has been groups of people returning back. And then on the truck drivers side also, because that has a direct impact on the economy, there also we've seen those same challenges, though it's slightly better than the labor, because many of the truck drivers are anyways mobile, so they possibly work on routes where their hometowns are en route, etc. So many of them do that as well. So like that, we've not seen that kind of a challenge in terms of their availability. But yes, there is a shortage of truck drivers as well right now. And trucks have started to come back on the road. Again, I would say 80-85% of trucks are on the road. Certainly, long distance trucking is a little lesser than short distance trucking, but it has picked up already.
Right. So with this, what are the kind of cost rationalization measures that you are resorting to? And are you seeing that because there are less number of truck drivers right now, the employee cost is something which could go up?
So lack of truck drivers is not a cost to us, because we do not own any major number of trucks. We own about 1,000 odd trucks out of the 10,000 trucks that we operate at any given time. So we don't have that driver related cost on our payroll anyways, because they're all contract labor. I think on the cost side, if you look at the two buckets of direct costs and the indirect costs. So on the direct costs, which is mainly related to trucks being hired, or when we work with vendors and they have a certain amount of fixed costs with us, what we've seen is that in this crisis, we've been always upfront with them. They are very sticky to us, because they know that we pay them on time, before time. We are very ethical in our practices, and we have had relationships with them for many, many years and decades as well. So there's a lot of stickiness with vendors, and they are happy to work with us. On the other side, we've tried to see how we can diversify from road to multimodal networks, so that brings out the cost structure also, because rail is 1/3 cheaper than road, and sea is even more cheaper. So those mainly on the direct costs. On the indirect side, certain branch rationalization, manpower rationalization, and process improvements are critical. I'll give you one small example of how process improvement can really help. Almost all large companies today insist that you please give us a physical bill copy. When you're billing us, give us a physical bill with the physical POD, proof of delivery, that this material has been delivered. Now, in this time, it's just virtually impossible to get all these documents tracked. And this was clearly a tactic to delay payment. So when we started sending them e-invoices, e-PODs, electronic PODs, they resisted and they said, no, you please send us the physical ones as well. What we are seeing is that once these things start improving, even the government has mandated that you should, from 1st of October, all companies above 500 crores should e-invoice. These are process improvements that will certainly save a huge amount of indirect costs.
Right. So are we trying to say that even if you have to compare road, rail, or even in terms of sea, which is the most optimal mix that you would prefer out of the three in terms of where costs are concerned, or even in terms of, say, efficiency goes?
It depends upon the product. It depends upon where you're going. It depends upon a lot of things. So I think there's no single answer to this. We know for a fact that sea is the cheapest amongst road, rail, and sea. But we have to figure out the last mile and the first mile, even with sea as well as with rail. So that it has to be. It cannot be point to point only. You have to look at the final destination and the final origin points as well. So, we do work for customers, let's say from Rajasthan, where we are moving grains via rail to Kandla port, where we have a ship. We load those containers onto our ship, bring it to Cochin, load it onto a truck, and then finally deliver it. So that's the entire supply chain movement for companies who are into commodities, for that matter. Now, if you look at a television manufacturer, this is not going to work for them. So this will also take a little longer, clearly, versus a direct road delivery. So it depends upon your product. It depends upon where you want to go. If you're moving from Mumbai side to Kolkata side, a rail or a truck might be more efficient.
Right. So right now, if you talk about, ports as well, a lot of material that was stuck during the period of lockdown as freight forwarding was something which was not really allowed. How is the situation now? Are you seeing the traffic which is reduced, or do you think it's still building on?
So freight forwarding, which was essentially the EXIM cargo, export-import cargo, we saw that exports did pick up, and it has actually started to pick up again. However, we are seeing a challenge on imports. There's not enough imports coming into the country, which means there's actually a container shortage right now that's happening in the port level. So it is a balancing act right now where certain exporters have to export because they have commitments, but they are facing higher cost structures because of the forwarding rates have gone up. But again, as the economy picks up more and more, imports should start increasing, and hence this anomaly should be better.
Right. So overall, Vineet, if you have look at logistics as a sector right now, we have been looking at a logistics policy which has been in the offing. I think it's been almost 2 to 3 years where the government has been working with it. Do you think, a epidemic like this, a pandemic like this, probably would give us an opportunity to get reforms in place? Because for India, we've always seen the best of the reforms, best of the policies that have been formed during such times of, uncertainties. Now, do you think a logistics policy is something which could be in the offing sooner from now?
Yeah, so the word that is used the second most after COVID in this crisis is supply chain.
Right.
Even our Prime Minister used it during his speech. Perhaps the most used word in terms of business. Supply chains are the hottest word, and related to it is logistics clearly. So as a country, 63% of our traffic of freight moves by road. Whereas in China, this number is possibly at 25, about 35%. And we have less amount of cargo that moves by rail, maybe about 25%, and even lesser by coastal shipping or even by inland waterways is virtually negligible, and air is also negligible. So in reality, this modal shift is very, very critical for our country to be competitive from an export-import perspective. We have to look at not road only, road, rail, sea combined, very, very importantly for our country. And for that, a national logistics policy, which is, I believe, is under offing, and I have had discussions with people there. We've seen a draft of the policy as well, and clearly that is moving towards several goals related to from a national perspective. One is more towards multimodal, so that we're able to bring down the cost of logistics
Correct.
in the country. More towards digitization, so that we are able to bring in more efficiencies in the supply chain, reduce the wastages that exist, like the one I just talked about in terms of invoicing, and also make things more efficient by using things like containers, pallets. Now, how many times have you seen a pallet? You've seen the guy moving things with a headload.
Correct.
So these things have to change and these are all part of the national logistics policy, and I do hope it comes out soon.
Right. And in terms of the costs as well right now, have you seen an increase in terms of per kilometer costs or in terms of volumes as well? Have the prices gone up?
Yes. So as you know, fuel prices have gone up.
Right.
So fuel prices have a direct impact on road pricing. It is about 40 to 50% of operating cost of a truck is fuel, and that is also not covered under GST. So you can't claim any input credit there. So it is a cost, and it has gone up in the last few weeks and months, and that has had an impact on a per kilometer rate as well. Volumes have started to pick up, but this being the monsoon season, also things are lower, and of course, factories are starting to reopen slowly and steadily. On the sea side, on the rail side, cost structures have not really gone up too much, so that's a little bit on the better side.
Right. And overall, if you have to talk about FMCG as well as e-commerce, that's been a sector which has been functional from day one almost. I think e-commerce has been slowly, steadily picking up right now. Do you think that's going to be something which is going to return back to normalcy way faster than any of the other sectors? Obviously, yes, pharma taking into consideration that's been operational as well.
Yes, I was reading a report which said that whatever in the last 4 months has happened on the e-commerce side, all these companies had plans for 4 years, to do this in 4 years. So the acceleration on the e-commerce side, the digitization has happened far, far quicker than anyone had anticipated. And we work on the fulfillment side of e-commerce companies where we run large warehouses for them and do the complete order processing from getting the items in, picking, packing, invoicing, and keeping it ready for dispatch. We don't do the last mile, but we do all those things in the middle. And we've seen volumes just tremendously grow in the last few months. In fact, we are at same levels as Diwali last year already. So this will certainly, I mean, in my house, there are 2 or 3 boxes coming every day. So I think that's true with almost many, many people. I think this is a trend that is going to stay. The companies that will certainly get a lot more benefit are logistics companies. I think this is one of those industries or businesses that has been not just stable in these times, but also growing in different areas. And I think companies like us have that whole portfolio of services that we can offer to our clients.
Right. So overall, what's the kind of capex do you think you would want to incur in this year?
We've been making a capex of about 100 crores every year, at least for the last several years. And we think that that's a minimum amount of capex that is needed for not just growing the business, but investing in the right kind of assets. And we expect the same about 100 to 125 crores of capex for this financial year as well. And that would go into different areas, including buying some assets related to movement, be it ships, be it rakes, be it trucks, and then of course some small hub centers, etc.
Right. And very lastly, in terms of growth, now everyone's been of the opinion that none of the companies, none of the industries are really looking at a good profit number in terms of FY21. Everyone's saying that, we just need to break even this year and get sustainability going. What's the sense that you have for logistics as a space and for the company for FY21?
So logistics as a space certainly has a lot more benefits versus a fixed industry where you have a certain amount of fixed costs. I think everyone is consuming, so you would need logistics for that in any space. So logistics per se has a huge future and definitely a great growth prospects. Although there are certain types of companies, there are companies that are focused on certain types of logistics, and I think that's a challenge because some sectors will pick up, some sectors will not pick up. So let's say there's a company in the listed space that's mainly into less than truckload kind of businesses, and 85-90% of the business is that, which essentially comes from SMEs, MSMEs, and MSMEs have not picked up so much. So maybe they will face some challenges. Or there are some businesses that are dedicated 80-85% of their businesses export or exim related. Perhaps they will face some challenges. Our company is quite diversified in terms of our breadth of services that we have and also vertical focuses. So we have an auto focus, we have chemicals, and so on. So I think those are things that are helping us right now, and that diversification has really helped us not just in this time, but also so diversification and also a little bit of a conservative mindset that we don't want to grow just for the sake of growing. We want to be careful with because there's possibly a lot of bad debts that might come up at this time. So you got to be careful with the growth, and I think that has sustained us for more than 60 years.
Right. All right, Vineet. Pleasure speaking to you, and thank you for sharing those insights as well about the industry, about the sector and the company. It was a pleasure speaking to you. I hope you enjoyed the interaction as well, and we will see you soon. Stay safe.
Thanks a lot, Hiral. Thank you. You too.